Hi there, and welcome to the Unfiltered Solopreneur, the podcast where we share real, unvarnished stories of people who dared to break free from the corporate grind. I'm your host, Nikhil, and I'm passionate about helping solopreneurs like you turn their dreams into reality. Today's guest is Cory, a former corporate sales leader turned keynote speaker, trainer, and solopreneur. Cory's brand is a unique blend of inspiration, motivation, authenticity, and courage, all centered around the concept of impact. Now, his journey is a testament to the power of embracing your true self and not being afraid to stand out. He emphasizes the importance of mindset and authenticity, especially in the corporate world where conformity seems to reign supreme. Now, here are my key takeaways from our conversation. Embrace your authentic self. Don't try to be someone you're not. Your unique personality is your biggest asset. Remember that failure is not fatal. It is actually an opportunity to learn and to grow. Find a mentor. This is really important. Having someone in your corner who believes in you and can guide you can make all the difference between success and failure. Don't play small. Great things can only happen when you allow yourself to step out of your comfort zone and really go for it. And embrace your mission. Keep your goals and values close to you and keep them in mind with every decision you make. And remember, the path of a solopreneur is not always easy, but it is incredibly rewarding. So stay true to yourself, embrace the challenges, and never give up on your dreams. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Cory. Welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil, your host, founder and CEO of Boost Solo. Now, imagine if Mel Robbins and The Rock had a high-energy love child who was raised by Brené Brown and Kevin Hart and grew up binge-watching Michael Jackson and every other bit of 80s popular culture. Well, you would get my next guest. Cory Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And that is me in a nutshell, for sure.
Well, and I would love to take credit for that introduction, but I cannot. That is how you described yourself, but I absolutely love it. So,
my mom said I was always had a clever way of announcing myself, and that's just the next iteration of that.
Yeah, you would have won me a lot of plaudits, but I had to be honest here. So let me start by asking you. So you transitioned from a corporate sales career to becoming a keynote speaker, a trainer, an entrepreneur. Could you tell me, was there like a turning point in your corporate career that sort of made you realize that entrepreneurship was the right path for you?
Yeah, fantastic question. I think it's, I've been through this process of evolution really my entire career. I started in sales 1,000 years ago, as it feels like. And even there was a moment where I had to shift. And the shift was I spent more time helping the new people and helping them get to the next level, helping them get a sale, even if it cost me a sale. And that's where my passion was. That's where I was excited. So I realized that I needed to make the shift over from just specifically focus on being a salesperson to helping other people. And that's what got me into training. And same thing for my leadership journey. And the moment of deciding that, hey, I need to go off and do this on my own is, there are things that, we feel really strongly about, especially in my world of coaching and training and developing other people. There are things that are harder work for me, but it's a better outcome for the person on the other side. What I learned in corporate, I don't want to knock any of my corporate friends, but what I learned in corporate a lot of time is you're fighting an uphill battle trying to do the things that are harder, that are more, time intensive. They're the things that are just a little bit more difficult to do, even if it's the right thing to do for the client, for the student, whoever it is on the other side. And I finally got to the point where, I felt so passionately about wanting to impact people. I realized I had to do it on my own. There was just no way around this big monster that was hanging out over my back. I just had to go and do it on my own, chart my own course, if you will.
Yeah, no. So it sounds like you felt a little bit shackled, right? Again, not to knock our corporate brethren, but there were constraints there that you sort of, there are lines you have to draw within, right? Or paint within.
Absolutely. I've never been good at coloring within lines. And to your point, shackled, it was hands and feet, sometimes tape over your mouth too. I mean, it was a lot of constraints, and, I'm willing to put myself out on a limb if it means, I get a stronger person on the other end.
Yeah, no, I get that. And that seems to be a common thread with a lot of entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. So let me ask you now, when you first started your entrepreneurial journey, you must have had some expectations of what it was going to be like, right? And so what is the reality of running your own business been compared to the expectation?
I think people talk about this one often, the reality that you have to wear so many different hats. I think I knew that coming into it, but you don't think about how many hats that really is. You think about all the other things that you do that kind of gets done behind the scenes, but man, really being in the business and realizing, oh, I don't have someone that can do that for me. I have to do it. And oh, I don't know how to do it. I have to figure out how to do it. So a lot of learning on the job, a lot of figuring things out that you've never really had to figure out before was a surprise, even though I kind of knew that coming into it. There was definitely some on the job training happening. And we were just really figuring out things, especially for those first couple months. A lot of trial and error, a lot of testing and seeing kind of what works and what clicks. And I think that's, for me, if I'm doing it right, for me, that process continues. It doesn't go away. I think that process of kind of learning on the fly and picking up new things and figuring out what works is a practice I want to keep.
And did you feel, I'm just curious because I had a turning point with this. I agree with you completely. But at one point, there is a point in time during which it just feels like, oh my God, not another new thing to learn, right? But then at some point, it sort of becomes like interesting, right? Here's another new thing to sort of learn and delve into. Because again, one of the reasons I started Boost Solo is you don't have to become an expert in every area in terms of depth of knowledge, but you have to be competent in everything, right? So did you feel like you reached a point where it just became a little bit fun?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pendulum probably swung too far for me for a little bit, where I got excited about the new challenges and I got excited about picking up the new things. And, I went to a phase there where I was just almost becoming a full-time student. And I was like, well, that's not totally productive for the business either. But I want to maintain a little bit of that mentality, that student mentality, but I have to kind of reel it in a little bit. And now I'm just learning for the fun of learning. So yeah, I think finding that balance for me was really important of, hey, what is the new exciting thing that I need to add to my arsenal, but also how can we help move this business and movement, really? How can we move this forward?
Yeah, no, you raised an interesting point because I was talking to somebody, a solopreneur last week, and he loves learning, but he suddenly realized he started going down rabbit holes, right? Where it reached a point where it was not beneficial to move, moving the business forward. It just became sort of like a quest to learn, knowledge on a deep level. So you're absolutely right.
I looked at my calendar one day, and the whole week was webinars and classes and courses, and it was nothing that was moving the business. It was great for me, but it wasn't moving the business. And I said, okay, that's not exactly a week that's moving me in the right direction. Great that I want to learn all that stuff, but let's kind of figure out where the balance is.
That's a lesson I've recently learned too. It's like I was going to build my website and I was like, wait a minute, I don't need to build the website because that's not a skill I'm going to be offering, a service I'm going to be offering my clients, right? So yes, I agree. So let me ask you, there's an interesting shift that happens, right? Because when you move from the corporate world, you're typically selling somebody else's product to now essentially selling yourself as a brand. So what was the most unexpected challenge you faced in making that shift?
Yeah, I think, and that's such a good point because yes, you're so used, and especially me, I come from sales. So I've always been, for almost 20 years, I've been used to selling a thing. And that shift when the thing is you takes a lot of deep work. First of all, for me, it was being really self-aware and understanding, hey, where are my strengths, especially moving into this business, and how can I amplify those? And hey, where are the opportunities where I need to get a little bit better? And that's where the learning comes in, as long as we, use that in moderation. But it's, it was understanding, hey, these are the things that I'm bringing to the table. Here are my unique features. If I was a product, right? Here are my unique features that are going to help me tell this story that I'm trying to tell of the brand and paint this picture of really of betterment and of growth and of helping people get to the next level. I really can be the engine of that. So it's a great opportunity to tell stories through my lens. So I think that's what's been also kind of therapeutic, but also really rewarding to be able to kind of filter everything through, hey, this is what I've lived in real life, and this is how we kind of fit all this together in this really beautiful tapestry that we're working on.
Yeah, no, I love how you described that. But I also wonder, though, and again, this is something I've experienced too, is did you ever hold some of yourself back because you weren't sure how much of yourself you wanted to put out there? And then sort of, did you feel that doing that more of your sharing more of yourself connected more deeply with your audience? Was that part of the journey?
Oh my God, I feel like you're digging into all my deepest, darkest secrets. Yes. So that was the early part of, especially going off on my own, because you don't have that corporate umbrella anymore. You don't have that shield to protect you. And when you're out on your own, it is just you. You're the face, you're the CEO, you're the brand ambassador, you're everything, right? And something transparently I was typically not great at was sharing kind of those more protected parts of myself. I got to give the credit. I have a great mentor, and she told me very bluntly one day that people don't want to see the version of you that you think they want to see. They want to see the real you, the real authentic you. And that's something that has lived with me, since then, is to be that authentic me, because I think that is the best me. It's not going to be for everybody, and that's okay. I realize that I wear bright suits and I have superheroes behind me, and it's a little out there. My branding is pretty loud and in your face, but that's the authentic me, which allows me to show up on the days where I'm sick, the days where I'm tired, and I have a newborn baby. So some nights we don't get sleep. On those days, because I'm being my authentic me, I don't have to think about what I want to say or how I want to show up. I just got to show up as me. And that resonates with my audience. And I think that makes my role a lot easier, because I get to just be kind of that version of me. I can sit in that pocket and not have to think about it too much.
Well, congratulations on the baby.
Thank you. And, Number 3. So I think I'm done. I'm off the train.
Well, you've had practice then.
Yes.
So it'll be child's play this time, pun intended.
Allegedly.
Yeah. And but that's true though, right? It is hard because, like you said a minute ago, it's very easy when you're selling, I don't know, an IBM or an Apple. You're like, if somebody doesn't like it or is critical of it, it's like, it's that other thing, right? But now suddenly everything is you, right? You take those things to heart. It's hard not to sort of not take it personally sometimes when people reject you or don't want to work with you. So how have you sort of dealt with that part of it?
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest learning curves, because, when I started in sales, I had to learn that the first time of, when people say no to the product, they're not saying no to you as a person. They're just saying no to the product. And that was a lesson I had to learn early in sales. And I held on to it for a long time. But then you kind of go back through the cycle. Now I'm off on my own. And hey, now it really does feel like they're saying no to me, because I am the product. And it was really just reminding myself that no is not no to me as a person. It's not no to, what I stand for. The solution is not solving the problem that I have, at least in its current iteration, or at least in the form that it was presented. It's not solving the problem that I perceive that I have. So we either need to find a way to make it closer, or maybe it's just not a fit. And I had to take my personal feelings out of it, which sounds so easy to do, but it was understanding that my no is not I don't like you, I don't want to play, ball with you. It is, hey, for some reason, this doesn't feel like a perfect marriage. And for me, that's where my salesperson brain kicks back in, and hey, let's figure out what this mystery is. Let's figure out how we can get into alignment. Sometimes we can't, and that's okay. But if there's room there for us to get alignment and get on the same page, that's where I start to solve the mystery and figure out, what did we miss? What are we not really clicking on?
Yeah. And that's a really important thing to learn, right? Because even as a branding specialist, I always say that you shouldn't be for everyone, because if you try to be for everyone, you will be for nobody. And that's a hard lesson when you're selling yourself. Like you said, you have to understand it's not a rejection of you as a person. It's just there's not the right fit sometimes. It's just like we're not friends with everyone, right? So, I mean, it's just the way the world works.
And to your point, when we try, we end up with no friends.
Exactly. So you touched on this, and I mean, we talked about it in the opening, but your brand has a really cool blend of influences, right? I love that you have Mel Robbins, The Rock, and Brene Brown in 80s pop culture. Now, as a brand strategist, I would say, okay, these feel like seemingly disparate elements. So how do you sort of cohesively and authentically sort of gel them into your personal brand?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because that's how I felt for a long time. Like, I had all these different aspects of me that felt like they were on different planets. And how do they connect? And that was, the lasting question for a lot of my career is, man, I live in these worlds. Yes, I'm a sales trainer and I'm a leadership coach, but I also enjoy these things. I enjoy talking about mindset and growth and betterment. And I like talking about, superheroes and pop culture references, and, how all these blend together. And I realized that I didn't have to make it fit into this perfect neat package. Again, that goes back to that authenticity. For me, it was just letting people into what the craziness of me is and letting them understand that it's crazy for a purpose. It's crazy because I talk about authenticity a lot. It's in a lot of my coaching, speaking, training is authenticity, but I also live it. And I wanted to be able to show that to people on the highest levels possible. Hence my crazy background. Hence, my visuals, when I post on socials and, a lot of times my attire as well. This is the real authentic me. And I wanted to be able to bring that to the stage, small or big, 24/7, because again, that's something that I don't have to, it doesn't cost me as someone that is not naturally extroverted, who spends a lot of time on the stage. It doesn't zap my energy like it probably should for my introverted personality. It doesn't strain as much because I'm really just being me. I learned a great thing from The Rock, who is one of my influences in my intro. And he said, the best version of himself as a character when he was wrestling was just him, his base personality turned up to 11. And that has been in my back pocket since I started in sales and all the way to today. It's just me cranked up just a little bit.
No, I love that. And you actually just divulged another great secret, right? Which is you have to sort of step into yourself, embrace yourself with the understanding that you're not going to appeal to everybody, right? And I love your little anecdote from The Rock, which is very true in terms of how to build a personal brand, right? I always tell people it's like, you're not building a brand. The brand was built the day you were born, right? And every year after that. So all you're doing is exposing yourself to the world, really.
It's
scary,
think about
right?
it.
It's scary as hell. But I also think we might put coaches out of business after this session, right? Because we're giving away all the secrets of how to actually, become your true self.
I'm going to get some hate mail for sure.
So let me ask you, I love your brand. You know that. It comes through, I think. But so are there any strategies you've used? Now, coaching is a very crowded market. It's a very competitive market. And every time I turn my head, somebody else has become a coach. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it's just true. So how do you, can you talk about some of the strategies you use to sort of stand out in this crowded speaking and coaching market?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a framework that I call impact. And if anyone that, sees my content, I use that word a lot. I cheated. It was originally my word of the year. And then it became kind of the overall brand identity was impact as these 6 things, not just the word impact, but impact became inspiration, motivation, purpose, authenticity, courage, and transformation. And that became the core values of what I wanted to start and what I wanted to build. So for me, especially talking about, my leadership clients and my sales clients, and really all my clients, there is not as much, especially when we talk about in our corporate lives, there's not as much emphasis on mindset as I think there could be. I think we do a really good talking about the X and O's and strategy. We do a really good job of that, but we don't always talk about the mindset and how to be that best version of yourself and what it means to show up to work authentically, right? We don't always touch those things as much as I think we could. And then when I look at just all the aspects of life, I like to break them down into 12 kind of different categories. And of the 12 categories, we do 4 of them really well. We talk about our careers really well. Coaches do this as well. We talk about our health really well. There's a ton of fitness channels and outlets for fitness. We talk about financials, right? Good or bad. And then we talk about relationships, same thing, good or bad. But for me, there's so many different aspects to life that we don't necessarily touch on. We don't talk about, how are we growing our mindset? We don't talk about our character. We don't talk about even things as, like parenting or our social lives or our quality of life, right? My big one is we rarely talk about what is our life vision? Where does this look? Where does this go in the next 1, 5, 10, 20 years? What does this look like? And am I taking the steps to get there? So for me, it's really about having a more holistic approach to not just who we are professionally, but who we are as people. Of course, professional is a big part of that, but who we are 360, I call it human 360. Who are we all the way around through that lens of that impact and the impact that we want to make on the world?
Yeah, no, I love that. And also, I think you touched on something else that really resonates with me is I always felt like education sort of puts us into these boxes and beats the individuality out of us, right? Because you see kids when they're born, they're like so curious, they're so different. Even kids within the same household, right? My sister and I were total opposites, and we came from the same, product of the same family and upbringing and environment and everything. But then when you go to school, I feel like we sort of start, beating out that individuality, sort of make us all conform. And similarly, like you just described in the corporate world, right? We're all supposed to sort of act and be the same way. And I'm not talking about being rude and bringing, putting up photos of your breakfast and every meal on social media. But I mean, as in we do sort of box people into being conformist, right?
Yeah. This is my story. That what you just said, that's my story. I was always, if you had my mother on here as your next guest, she would tell you that I was always, as a baby, loud and happy and boisterous and talking to everyone. And because of what happens when you go to school and you have teachers that don't like that, they kind of box you in and they put you in this place where they think you should be. So I spent a big chunk of my life, I'd say from ages probably 7 to 17, forcing my body to be quiet and shrink. And it took a long time for me to get back to. I always tell people, this is not a new version of me. This is just me connecting with the real me. And it took a long time to get back there because you have to break out of those shackles. You said it earlier, and break out of that box that you were forced into that wasn't even a box you're supposed to be in.
Yeah. And I think we're definitely going to have your mom on the show. I would love to have her.
I'll give you all the secrets.
So coming back to something you were saying earlier, which is you talked about your authentic self, sort of how you stepped into sort of owning that. But we also live in a world which is always changing. There's a new trend. There's a new cultural thing. There's a new shiny object. So how do you stay true to yourself and ensure that your brand remains authentic rather than sort of being distracted by everything that's happening around us, which today is on steroids, right?
That's so good because it happens so fast, right? Before you know it, I call it doom scrolling, where you're in the wormhole and you're like, what just happened? I just killed 2 hours, right? Or you start to, I see this with a lot of leaders. I see this with a lot of coaches. You start to emulate what you think you should be doing just because others are doing it. And if it doesn't fit you authentically, it doesn't resonate. People feel it. So for me, it's always been about keeping my hand on, what the mission is and what the core values are. I told you that the core values of impact, but also keeping an eye on the mission. And my mission is to impact. I used to say impact 1 million people. I hope to have to change that very soon to a bigger number, but keeping my eye on the mission. And this is what I want to accomplish with the time that I have. And I don't know if that time ends tomorrow or if it goes for another 20 years, but with the time that I have, here's what I want to do. So the things that I do on a daily basis or the actions that I take in my business, I have to ask the question, does that get me toward that big, crazy goal, or does that move me in the wrong direction? And if it doesn't, that's that self-awareness. That's where that kicks in and I have to readjust. It doesn't mean throw the plan away, but it means I have to tweak because maybe that's not in alignment with where I want to be or really realistically where I need to be, because oftentimes where you need to be is not always where you want to be.
True. And I imagine you also call your mom once a day when you need a resetting.
Yeah, that is the absolute truth because she will reset me with the quickness.
Yeah, I have that. I am also lucky that way. Whenever I feel like I've gotten too high on my horse, I give my mother a call.
Good old reality check. Yeah, mom is always
absolutely.
Good for that.
You need that. So the other thing I love that you talk about in the superhero mindset is embracing failure as part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
So can you share a personal story of a setback or a failure that actually propelled you forward in the end?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you about failures all day because I've done nothing but fail. But for me, it's about failing with a purpose, right? It's about failing to get you in the right direction. For me, it was about understanding my mission is to become a world-class sales trainer. So I understood that if I wanted to train on a very high level, I need to pick up these tools that I could only get through failure. So I went purposefully to the really tough assignments so I could understand, here's how I handle these situations. So down the road, when a person was in a similar situation, I could talk to it from a place of, I don't want to say expertise, but I could talk to it from a place of understanding.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how do you instill that? How do you coach aspiring entrepreneurs to embrace failure and sort of step into the growth?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I want, entrepreneurs and really everyone to understand this is the challenge that we all have, I think, as humans, is we see failure. First of all, it's such a strong word, and we see failure as final, right? And we see failure as fatal, even sometimes, right? Failure feels like the end of the road, and sometimes it feels like death. And it's almost never that. And it's certainly rarely is it the end of the road unless you let it be the end of the road. So I challenge entrepreneurs getting into something new, something different, that if you can embrace this idea that, hey, I took a big chance, it didn't work out, but I learned X, Y, and Z, then you remove that huge fear of the failure, because now failure is your tool of growth. And when you can see failure as a tool of growth, now you're not trigger shy, because I think we've all been in a situation where fear caused us to not take the action that we should have taken, and it held us back. But when we can eliminate that fear of what if it goes bad, when the answer is, if it goes bad, I'm going to learn something. If it goes great, I'm going to win. Now we start to take more bold actions. We start to take more bold steps. Now, that doesn't mean go recklessly into the dark, but it means, be more willing to kind of stare down that thing that scares you the most. For me, it's really interesting that I spent a lot of my time on stages speaking to very large groups when I was a kid that failed speech class 3 times because I couldn't do it. The reality of my story, and we talk about failure, the reality of my story is that the thing that scared me the most in the world was standing up in front of a classroom of 10 kids. But once I got past that fear, it's exactly where I needed to be. I just couldn't see it at the time.
Right. And you even mentioned earlier, I remember that even as an introvert, you are out there speaking and doing things that would scare the hell out of any introvert, right?
Yeah. Part of that is knowing yourself, right? And understanding, for me, especially, the introvert sides of my personality, I don't think will ever go away, but it's understanding how you quiet that beast and how you feel it when you need to. When I feel the introvert means I can listen really well. I can absorb information at a really high level. When I need to quiet the beast, I got to make sure if I'm speaking, how prepared am I? How comfortable do I feel? How do I reboot when the engagement's done? If I train for 5 days, is day 6 rest? Is it a reboot day, right? And it's just understanding your body and understanding your mentality on how to make sure that you're always kind of at your peak performance.
Yeah, and you just said something beautiful, which is that, we spend so much time trying to change who we are, where the strength comes from embracing who you are and understanding how to use that to your advantage, right? Because we all have gifts, we all have, various different types of gifts, but it's just being able to channel them, use it as fuel, or use it, like you said, quietening your body when you need to, and then using your superpowers of listening versus when you're talking, using your other superpower, right? So
yes,
I love
exactly.
that. Yeah. But I feel like we also live in a society where the odds are stacked against us, right? Because everything you see on social media is success, and it's all overnight success. Like I was talking to somebody recently who was like, they thought that the moment they launched their solo business, the clients would come flooding in because that was what they'd sort of been led to believe, right? So I'm just curious. I mean, like, how do you sort of combat that day-to-day onslaught?
Yeah, it's that can be a challenge, right? Because that's all we see is, especially now, if you're not careful with your algorithm, it'll show you some stuff that could be pretty destructive to your mindset. And it'll show you how, people are, hey, I got 1 million clients in 30 days by doing this. And it's just, number one, it's not reality, but it's, also understanding that, hey, as good as those pictures sound, I understand that this journey that I'm on and this path that I'm on is going to take work. And of course, if I do the hard work and I take the appropriate risk and learn from my mistakes, then some luck may happen, but I can't expect the luck to happen. And I also got to be real. I talk to people and they say, your brand is growing so much, it feels like it's happening overnight. And, I know that it's certainly not overnight. I know the work that it took to get there. And it's always remembering that, because sometimes we forget that and we get very excited by the quick wins and forget that, hey, this is a grind. It doesn't mean it's a bad, terrible thing, but it is a grind, and we got to make sure that we're always prepared for that grind, because then we can never be caught off guard when things go not in the way that we expected.
And they do for everyone, right? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this show. It's unfiltered, right? To let everyone out there know that the reality is the reality, right? You can't sort of change that with social media as much as we'd like to. So the other thing I want to touch on is, like, So for high energy entrepreneurs like yourself, and you wear a lot of different hats, speaker, trainer, coach, what are your go-to strategies to avoid burnout while you're sort of maintaining your energy and momentum to do all these things?
Yeah, and again, that's such a great question. For me, it is knowing what refuels me. And I say that because it is different for everyone. And I think a lot of times, we think, and especially even as leaders, in organizations, we make this mistake as well, that we think we know the magic pill to keep people engaged and to keep them excited and to keep them on board. And it's really different for everyone. Everyone's motivations are different. For me is I always remember that even if, I have some great wins, there's work to do. But within that, I make sure that I appreciate the things that I can appreciate. I make sure that I take time for self. I just told you, I have a new baby. And, 2 years ago in my corporate life, the amount of time I'm able to spend with this new baby wouldn't have been possible. It wouldn't have been possible at all. That kind of things, as long as I'm aware of it and I don't let it slip me by, those kind of things refuel me naturally. So if I got to work late on a Friday, or if I got to, do an early call, kind of earlier than I expected, it's okay because I've made a choice to go on this journey, and there are wins that come along with that. So I got to be able to kind of hang on to the wins when I can, and use that as my fuel to keep me going. And again, like I always say, I keep the mission and the purpose really close to home. You can't see it, it's on the other side of my screen, but I keep the mission kind of always in eye shot, because every decision I make, every feeling I'm feeling, I want to go through that mission and make sure that we're still in alignment.
Can I ask you to read out the mission?
Yeah, so it is the mission of impact. So it is definitely making sure that we always tap into the inspiration and the motivation, because a lot of folks don't know that inspiration and motivation are two different things. Inspiration is the fire. Motivation is the machine. It gets you going. Always making sure that I keep in my purpose. I keep living in my purpose, which is to help people become the better version of themselves, best version of themselves. I want to make sure that I'm always living and working authentically. I want to tap into that courage. That's why I keep a lion behind me. Make sure I tap into that courage constantly. And then this is all about transformation, whether I'm working with sales teams, sales leaders, or just people in life and entrepreneurship. It's all about making sure that we transform into what that next version of us looks like.
Yeah, no, I love that. And there is something about having it written down or having it in front of you, right? That your brain just, I think, absorbs it in a different way, right? Than so just thinking you have it in your head. No, I agree. I keep a little bit in my wallet, a small little Y in my wallet. So
I love that. I have the Simon Sinek Find Your Why, right? And I keep it on my shelf, just close by, just in case.
And I love your line. We talked about that before.
Yes. See, I trick myself, because if I'm ever feeling down at the right angle, it looks like I'm wearing a crown.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I was intimidated when you first came on camera. It works really well. So now I want to change gears a little bit. So you proudly identify as an autism advocate.
Yes.
Now, so how is being a father to a child with autism shaped your perspective, and also both professionally and personally, if you could talk about that?
That could be a call within itself. I think that has done a couple things. Number one, that was the biggest part of my life that I kept close. It wasn't for any other reason than it was just my thing, right? And I kept that really close. And I had that same mentor, and she said, you got to share all aspects of you. And it's going to feel scary and it's going to feel messy. And that was something that I had kept close. He's 11 years old now and he's amazing. But for many, many years, only the closest people knew that side of my life. Even folks that I'd worked with for years didn't know that side of my life. And, for me, tapping into that, which was probably the most guarded and scariest thing to release to the world, once that floodgate opened, the other stuff felt easy, man. The other stuff, like, yeah, I failed speech class twice. Okay, who cares, right? Or, all the other things that we gripe about and we are afraid to share, they became really minor. And also it opened me up to a whole new community of amazing people that are super supportive. But more importantly, that helped drive this entire machine of the idea that every individual has their own superpowers, their own abilities that we can tap into. and understanding that we're all very, very different. And there is no cookie cutter way. There's no, color by numbers way to success. It just doesn't exist. And everyone has to find out what their path is on their own. It took for me to see a boy who, has challenges, but has unique skills and amazing gifts as well. There's a lot of that going on in all of us. And that really opened up the floodgates for this kind of thinking, which led me to the superhero mindset. So I give him a lot of the credit for taking my brain down that path. And also, it opened me up to a ton of patience and empathy just in general. It just really, you just have to be in that space.
Yeah, it's amazing how kids, all stripes have a way of doing that, right? It's just sort of giving us a new perspective.
And then I have my 9-year-old, that's the mini me. He is, you get what you pay for. The one so we'll see how this third one shakes out.
Yeah, he'll have to be different, right? Because they all have to sort of figure out how to be more different already. So we'll see. He'll have to figure out his brand.
Exactly.
So you mentioned your mentor a few times. Could you talk a little bit about how important that's been in this journey, having a mentor?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been everything, and I think I just joked with her the other day. I said, I think I bring you up on every podcast I'm on or every conversation I have because, number one, for me, especially where I was in my career, I was doing pretty good in sales, but knew I wanted to move into coaching. I didn't have any proof that I should be a coach or would be a good coach. I just had the desire and the will to want to do it. And I looked at her, and that's her role at the time. And I said, I want to do what you do. And instead of just kind of shooing me away like most people would, she said, okay, well, here's some things you need to work on and I'll help you get there. And she had no reason to do that or say that to me, especially a kid at the time and a stranger really, but really just took me under her wing right away and nurtured me for a long time until it was time to really move me into that role. And then when I was moved into the role, it wasn't about become this. The conversations were never do what I do or become me. The conversations are always about be you and take chances. I hired you for your personality, not because you could copy a personality. So it was always about take chances. Some are not going to go so well. And we'll talk through that. And in fact, the first time she gave me the stage, it went horribly wrong. And I learned right away that my boss, my leader came to me and said, okay, that didn't work, but here's what we can do. And it took away the fear of like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to burn down. And number one, that was a lot of confidence from her of, hey, no matter what this idiot kid does, I can fix it. But also it's all about the growth that he's going to experience. And I experienced a ton of growth early on. So that mentorship's been amazing. I haven't worked for her for years, but it's still someone that I tap into because, you have that, once you have that relationship and that bond of understanding that I know for a fact that you absolutely want what's best for me, it gives me the ability to speak to you from a really authentic place and really just talk through how I'm feeling, what I'm going through, what I'm thinking. And we have great dialogue that way. It's a relationship that goes many different levels. It's sibling, it's parent, it's, friend, it's all the things in between. So yeah, that mentorship, without that, I don't know where I am in this journey. Certainly not where I am today, but I don't know where I end up without that freedom to be me, because that evolved into this big version of me. That's where those baby steps started.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's awesome that you have someone like that. And I think everyone should seek a mentor out, right? Because it's so important to have on this journey. And the other thing which I love that you said is she didn't get you because a lot of leaders, the mistake they make is they try and replicate themselves. And I've seen that with a lot of entrepreneurs, even in terms of they hire themselves. Like this whole thing of founder mentality to me makes no sense because obviously who hired the people that you think didn't do, were not good. But again, that's another podcast maybe. And the other thing I love is also the room to grow, right? To fail. I think that is something that is lacking in the corporate world because failure is seen as such a stigma. And it's like, dings you on every level that we just don't allow people to have that room that you just described, because that's what makes us better. That's what makes us stronger. And that's what makes us better leaders, I think, and people.
Yeah. And for the leaders out there, that works on both ends, because I know for her, we've had conversations about this. For her, that gave her the ability to let me kind of go out on a limb, knowing that I feel so comfortable in my skin, even if I mess up, that I'm just going to be honest with you. And a lot of times, let's be honest, we're humans. We try to hide what happened or our mistakes, or we shy away from it, or we minimize. I was able to just be really honest with hey, I took a chance. It didn't work. what do you think I could do differently? And we were able to have really great dialogues, which, I'll tell anybody, I had some peers at the time that we were kind of all coming up together, and I had massive growth in that time because of that relationship and the ability to say, I'm going to take a chance. It didn't work. How can we fix it? And that just got me better very quickly. And we've kind of been on a rocket ship ever since then. So for the leaders out there, man, that really sets you up for putting some amazing people around you. If you just let them breathe a little bit, right? And be willing to coach them up to where they need to be, and understanding that they're not going to be a finished product. And if you are just bringing in a copy of yourself, you're not expanding the business. You're just making another you. That doesn't grow you in the places you need it to grow.
No, not at all. And actually, that's one of the things I always tell people is that you never fail unless you fail to learn something from that experience. That's all failure is. So if we were to meet again, say 5 years from now, and I hope we meet before that, to have a conversation, what would you want to have achieved in your business in that time?
Oh man, transparently, I've been very blessed. I set out a 5-year goal, and in year 2, I've hit just about all of them. For me, I would love to be kind of at the helm of what I think is an evolution of business. I'd love to be kind of one of those lead voices that changes how we look at leadership, how we look at sales, how we look at entrepreneurship, how we look at just corporate life in general. I think there's a lot of room for us to grow and again, look at the whole human, not just the pieces that we need for business. I would love to be at the kind of the tip of the spear of what that revolution looks like in how we go to work every day and how we live our lives kind of within all these different nuances of what we do. I'd love to be at the head of that. Now, what did that mean? That can be everything from maybe you'll see me on TV, maybe you'll see me speaking all over the country. That's always something fun to do. But more importantly, I want to make sure that I'm still the same authentic me, 5 years from now. I never want to compromise who I am, at the core. I want to make sure that, the message that I talk about stays forever.
Yeah. And honestly, I think we really need that right now, Cory. I mean, given with AI, with working from home, sort of remote work, the divisiveness we have across the spectrum, it's like we really need like a reinvention of, day-to-day life from the corporate and from the professional and the personal world. So
true. Yeah. What a shakeup that we're going through right now.
Yeah, I know. But that's always that to me, that's always opportunity, right? That's when you have to invent the future, as someone once said, right? You can't predict that.
Well, see, that's the challenge. A lot of times we can see these shakeups as a negative thing, or we can see it as, the sky is falling. It's very easy to go down that road, but we can see it, like you said, as an opportunity to improve on things, especially when we look at work life. Work life has been the same for so long. And this is an opportunity to bring some new nuance to it.
And change always requires some tussle, right? It's never going to be.
We got to get in the mud a little bit sometimes.
But otherwise it's not worth doing. So let me ask you, if you could offer one piece of advice to someone who wants to start this entrepreneurial or solopreneur journey, what would you say to them?
I would say for the person that wants to start this journey and wants to be an entrepreneur, solopreneur, once that bug gets into your ear and you start thinking that, hey, this is something I might want to do, don't do me and, delay it for years and years and years because of fear. Once that's in your head and you feel really strongly about it and you have a good plan, and you have a good mission and you have a good kind of compass of where you want to go, sooner is better than later, because you're just going to get further away from your goal. And that's the risk of being more burned out, being more, dejected, and being, less of that fire that you came into this idea with. So I would say, be active when it comes to chasing your goals. A lot of people do a really good job of chasing their goal or putting goals out there rather, but they just kind of sit back and wait for them to happen. I think you have to take an active part in your story. One of the things I talk about is most humans, unfortunately, we are background characters in our own story, and we watch other people live the lives that we wanted to live. We're the best friend, we're the coworker, we're the sidekick. And I tell people, especially my entrepreneurs and my solopreneurs out there, become the hero of your own story and take control of what's on the page. That's up to you. And once you have the plan, take action.
Yeah, I love that. Take the leap, right? Because there's never a good day other beyond today.
That's it. And I don't know if I have tomorrow.
Yeah, true. Well, that's a good way to live. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience that we haven't covered, Cory?
Yeah, I think, making sure, especially when we talk about, you mentioned mentors. I always talk about making sure that I have a really great circle of people that are around me that are going to help me grow, not people that are just there to tell me what I want to hear, people that are going to help me grow and better myself. And when I have that mindset, I always want people to remember that you can go really fast alone, but you can go so much further together. And if you have the right people around you that are helping you kind of craft what this machine looks like, it doesn't mean that they literally work for you, but they're just part of the think tank. You can go so much further, and it's a much more efficient way to live and do business.
That's great advice and a lovely way to end and get to our rapid fire round.
Yes.
All right. So if you could give any superhero one piece of leadership advice, what would it be? Who would it be and why?
Oh man, one piece of leadership advice. Man, I would go with my favorite superhero. I've always been a Spider-Man fan. That is my favorite. I was kind of a young Peter Parker growing up, so I always resonated with Spider-Man. One of the things I'd tell Spider-Man, and I understand that it's a comic book and they got to sell issues, so they need him to struggle, but I would tell him stop playing small. He played small a lot in the comic books, and he was known as one of the best heroes out there, but played a lot of small ball and kind of lived below his potential quite a bit. And I'd say to Spider-Man, you have the potential to be the absolute top tier of hero in this universe, but you have to be willing to go out on a limb and live that potential. There's nothing that drives me crazy more than, unfulfilled potential.
I love that. And so Spider-Man, you go beyond what you think is possible, right?
Yes, you're on notice, Spider-Man.
What's the most unexpected lesson you've learned from a speaking engagement gone wrong?
Man, I don't know if it was unexpected. It was probably a lesson I should have known, but don't rely on technology. As we've seen on this call, technology fails you whenever it wants to. So make sure that no matter what the speaking engagement, make sure that at core, the message comes from your heart. Because when technology goes, I didn't say if, but when technology goes, sometimes we just have to freestyle it. And sometimes we have to be able to just go off the cuff. And if we're speaking from here, then we don't have to think about what maybe was prepared. It doesn't really matter anymore. So don't rely on that tech because it will fail you.
I love that, especially in the age of AI when we're becoming so dependent on it. If your keynote speeches had a secret ingredient, what would it be?
Oh, it is it's entertainment. It is entertainment. I sat into a ton of speeches over the years, and some were good, but most were dry. For mine, you're going to get a little bit of music. You're going to get a little bit of jokes, a little bit of humor. You're going to get a little bit of fun, and it's going to be entertainment that's educational at the same time.
You have to invite me to the next one.
Absolutely.
What's your soundtrack to get pumped for a big event or a big challenge?
Man, there's so many of them. Right now. So I've done for a long time. This goes back to my sports days. I used to do Victory by the Notorious B.I.G. just because it was a very kind of brooding song, but it was about being victorious. So that one is always a good one if I need to really lock in. But really anything that is going to just get me pumped up and get the kind of the blood flowing, I can go to right now. So I've been doing a lot of Prince lately. A lot of Michael Jackson will get the trick done. So just depends on what I'm feeling at the time. But anything in that realm will just get me in the spot I need to be in.
I thought you were going to go with the Michael Jackson, but I love that.
Yeah. That's usually my go-to because it's such a deep catalog. So,
what is the most unconventional prop you've ever used during a presentation?
You can barely see it, but I'll bring it in closer. My championship belt.
Oh, that's awesome.
My championship belt, most unconventional prop. Absolutely. I talked about being, building a championship culture, and I wore my belt on stage. So yeah,
so another hidden talent we didn't know about, Cory. And a great way to end the show, Cory. Thank you so much for your time, all your wisdom, and for the entertainment.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you bringing me on your platform. What you do is amazing, and you're changing lives. Absolutely.
That wraps up another episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I would love to hear your thoughts about today's conversation. Let's continue the discussion in the comments below or on LinkedIn at Boost Solo. If you're looking to connect with like-minded solopreneurs and take your business to the next level, join our Boost Solo community. And if you're ready to turn your expertise into a story that sells, book a free strategy session at boostsolo.com. Remember, your story is your most valuable asset. Live solo or die corporate.